We're going.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody to the PSU Futures Collaboratory's third of four Future of Work webinars for the 2020-2021 academic year. We are truly excited about these sessions and appreciative of you joining us today. Welcome to everyone from PSU and from our guests from around the United States and the world. I'm Sally Mudiamu, a PSU Futures Fellow and Director of International Partnerships in the Office of International Affairs. I'm a certified foresight practitioner through the Institute of the Future in Palo Alto, and I'm a scholar practitioner of International Virtual Exchange, also known as COIL. I'm a futurist in the field of digital, virtual, global engagement, and I believe that the future of work is deeply connected to this domain. I want to thank my partner today and co-creator of this webinar series, Dr. Laura Nissen, leader of the PSU Futures Collaboratory, Presidential Futures Fellow, Professor of Social Work, and a Research Fellow at the Institute of the Future. Many thanks also to Mr. David Burrow and his assistant, Pei Zhang, who are helping us with our technical aspects of the webinar. We all share the vision together that the future of work is here, and whether we feel ready for it or not, we actually have the capacity and tools to meet it. Before we get going with our awesome group of speakers and panelists today, I'd like to share a little bit of background about the PSU Futures Collaboratory for those who are just learning about us for the first time. The PSU Futures Collaboratory was established in 2019 by then acting President Stephen Percy to serve as a place for people from across our campus to join in an experimental and improvisational space to explore the topic of the future writ large and build the collective skill of foresight. It was the brainchild of Dr. Laura Nissen, my co-creator in this series, who has brought she has brought in a wide array of renowned and thoughtful leaders and future thinkers to talk to our collaboratory, including Afrofuturists, writers, community leaders, researchers, activists, educators, and scholars, all of whom work to explicitly shape a better and more equitable collective future. From them, we have learned a variety of foresight tools and frameworks and are actively applying these tools to real-world challenges we have at PSU. Please visit our website, which will be put up in the chat, to see more about what we've been doing this year, including links to the previous two Future Work webinars we just had last month with Dr. Anmal Chadha and Maggie Wool. We also encourage you to take a survey on the 3 big questions, we call it, of the future, and invite you into dialogue with us. The future of work is in many respects a story about equity, justice, human rights, human agency, and the future of well-being. Sometimes the future of work discourse is pitted against the future of higher education discourse. This is a problem and has long-standing tensions that need to be acknowledged. Our purpose today is in showing how inextricably linked or connected these two topics are, particularly for a university in which so many of our students are invested deeply in experiencing their own economic mobility and agency as a result of their education. Our purpose as a university is to provide architecture for students to participate in the world and their future careers in ways that they choose. What must we as a university learn about the changing pathways to the future of work and to be able to serve our students in the coming years? How can these lessons make us better and stronger as a university without compromising our values and ideals as educators? Among the most important things right now on the minds of students, graduates, and faculty right now are whether or not they're going to get a job after graduation, and whether that first post-college job is going to be a good job. That means one that allows for their social and economic mobility in our state and beyond. Fortunately for us, we have 4 speakers today who can speak directly to this concern. First, I'd like to introduce Toddnell, the Director of the Workforce Talent Development Board for the state of Oregon. The board is part of the state of Oregon's Higher Education Coordinating Commission, the primary state entity responsible for ensuring pathways to post-secondary education, successful Oregonians statewide, and serves as a convener of the groups and institutions working across the public and private higher education arena. Todd is part of Oregon Governor Kate Brown's Future Ready Oregon initiative, which works to close the gap between the skills that Oregon's workers have and the skills that Oregon's employers will need in the future. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Mark Mitsui, president of Portland Community College. He sits on the National Task Force on Higher Education Opportunity, which is currently focused on preparing the most vulnerable students and graduates of the years 2020 through 2023 for security and success in the post-pandemic economy. Of his many accomplishments was the approval of the 2017 capital bond measure, paying for a new Portland Metropolitan Workforce Training Center. President Mitsui recently announced he will be retiring from PCC in June 2022. Our next speaker is Sherry Dunn, attorney, news anchor, CEO, professor, thinker, agent of change, and game show winner. Sherry helps communities reimagine institutions, work, and life, and she consults for the Oregon Workforce and Talent Development Board, including the Task Force on Equitable Prosperity. Sherry has a degree in philosophy and believes, as attributed to Carl Jung, that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives, and we will call it fate. Sherry was the Portland Business Journal's 2019 Woman of Influence and 2018 Executive of the Year. She is also the recipient of Oregon Governor Kate Brown's Driving Force Award. Our fourth speaker is Christian Kaler, a workforce economist for the Oregon Employment Department, specializing in the Portland area. He provides data analysis and advice relating the Portland economy to local businesses, business associations, and government agencies to facilitate intelligent decision-making. Before coming to the Employment Department 18 years ago, Christian worked in various positions in Oregon politics and policy. He has served as a legislative assistant to the Oregon Senate Minority Whip and campaign manager for the Oregon House Minority Leader. A native Oregonian, Christian has a degree in economics from the University of Oregon. At the conclusion of our speakers' remarks, we will be joined by three PSU respondents. First, I'd like to introduce Abby Chroman. She is program manager for the Social Innovation Hub at the PSU School of Business, which offers a graduate certificate and business minor in social innovation. She co-leads the PSU Map the System project with the University of Oxford in the UK. She is a current PSU Futures Fellow and serves on the board of advisors for the World Economic Forum's Global Shapers Hub in Portland. Carlos Crespo is professor in the OHSU PSU School of Public Health and vice provost for undergraduate training in biomedical research at Portland State University. Dr. Crespo is the principal investigator and director of Build Exito, an undergraduate research training program that supports students on their pathway to becoming scientific researchers that find solutions to today's major health problems. He has an active research portfolio in physical fitness, epidemiology, and minority health. And last but not least, Alexa Rector is an undergraduate advertising management major. Her interests include environmental sustainability, product innovation, and blockchain. After school, she hopes to contribute to a company that promotes outside of the box ideas and hold high standards for ethical and environmental responsibility. After our panelists pose questions to our speakers, then it will be your turn. Please use the Q&A function for your questions, since that is where I'll be pulling them from. However, use the chat function to share your thoughts and responses in real time. While our webinar is virtual, I would like to make a land acknowledgement. Portland State University is located in the heart of downtown Portland, Oregon, and Multnomah County. We honor the indigenous people whose traditional and ancestral homelands we stand on. The Multnomah, Cathlamet, Clackamas, Tumwater, Watlala bands of the Chinook, and the Tualatin and Kalupuya, and many other indigenous nations of the Columbia River. It is important to acknowledge the ancestors of this place and to recognize that we are here because of the sacrifices forced upon them. In remembering these communities, we honor their legacy, their lives, and their descendants. Thank you. let's begin. So we are going to start with Toddnell, who is going to talk a little bit about HECC's work. Then Mark, President Mitsui, will talk about his efforts through his work on the task force in PCC. Sherry Dunn will talk about the Oregon Equitable Prosperity Task Force, which she chairs or has chaired. And then Christian Kaler will give an overview of economic and workforce projections for the Portland metropolitan area and the region. Thank you everyone for being here today. So let's begin.
Great, thank you so much, Sally. It's a pleasure to be here today with my esteemed colleagues and good friends, Mark Mitsui and Sherry Dunn. Again, my name is Toddnell. I'm with the State Workforce and Talent Development Board. The WTDB, just a little context for those of you who might not know, is a business-led 45-member board that serves really in an advisory role to the legislature and the governor's office on workforce and talent development. We are housed in the Office of Workforce Investments, which is under the Higher Education Coordinating Commission. In our role as board members, we've been able to accomplish quite a bit, as you'll hear from Mark and Sherry after me on, in terms of what we did in 2020 and so far in 2021. As a group of leaders from around the state, we are concerned about many things from day to day related to the workforce and the business community and our economy writ large. But for many of us, I would say the movement to ever increasing levels of technology, automation, and artificial intelligence, and the future of work is at the top of the list as we move into the fourth industrial revolution. I'm going to share my screen here. Can you see that?
Looks good.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to quickly go over some of the work that we have.
Todd, can you go to the slideshow or presentation mode with that?
Oh, sure. Is that better?
Looks good. Onward.
Onward, thank you. So some progress that the WTDB has made over the last year in particular, in spite of COVID and the wildfire crisis around the Talent Assessment Summit, Artificial Intelligence report, the Essential Employability Skills report, the STEM Education Plan, Equitable Prosperity report, and last but not least, the Childcare Task Force. I wanted to first start off by saying a few things about our strategic plan, because I think it helps to us as members gauge our progress. Our vision is equitable prosperity for all Oregonians, and our mission is about advancing Oregon. That means both workers and employers. We're excited about how this has kept us on track through 2020 and into 2021. It's a biennial strategic plan, obviously. And the best thing of all, I think personally, is that it's a one-page plan. It keeps us focused, it's kept us actionable, and it's very trackable to gauge our progress. Again, our work is business-driven, and we value public and private partnerships as we move into the fourth industrial revolution. So in terms of progress, in the spring of 2020, the biennial talent assessment was published, and it dove into skill problems, gaps, shortages, and mismatches that also diagnosed conditions through a combination of employer surveys, analysis of economic data, and other information. The talent assessment determined that employers didn't really receive or perceive rather basic skills gaps with those that were surveyed and info gathered from, but did see a shortage of skills for specific occupations, particularly those with problem solving and critical thinking skills at the top. Employers signaled a high demand for engineers, skilled tradespeople, and project managers. The report concluded that key interpersonal skills like leadership, honesty, ability to work in teams are lacking still, while also growing in importance. The assessment served really as a foundational document for that strategic plan that I spoke of earlier. Also in fall and winter of 2020, the WTDB published the Artificial Intelligence in a Post-Pandemic World report, as well as the Essential Employability Skills report around the importance of those human skills. An additional report will be coming out of the work that Mark and Sherry will both touch on in a bit around the Equitable Prosperity Task Force, which will be completed in July of this year. I'd like to share a little bit quickly about the Essential Employability Task Force and the STEM education plan work. And then I'll toss it over to Mark, who'll dive more deeply into the AI task force work, and then Sherry with the EPTF work as well. So the Essential Employability Skills Task Force was formed not only based on information that we received from the talent assessment in 2020, but also because of feedback and input that we had received from the business and employer community for years. We had a great mix of partners that came into the task force, which was co-chaired by business. And it resulted in a well-received report that was sent to the governor's office and the legislature, and behind the scenes activity continues to occur. I just wanted to share some of the policy recommendations that are in the report, and I would encourage you to look it up and read it as it's quite telling and has some good strategies that I think will resonate with you. So some of those recommendations were about engaging community-based and culture-specific organizations around training programs in essential employability skills models. Another was to direct the Oregon Department of Education and HECC in a partnership to embed essential employability skills in K-12 curriculum, and to integrate that as soon as possible into high school graduation requirements. Third, to scale proven and promising models. Fourth, make strategic investments in essential employability skills programs. And last, create a state-recognized and employer-recognized and driven essential employability skills badge or badges. Moving on to the STEM work now that we see as a very vital and important piece of the work that we're doing as we move into the future of work. The STEM Council, which is comprised of members from the business community and other education and training partners from around the state, has had quite a bit of success over the last 8 to 9 years. This timeline shows you that most recently, the Oregon STEM Hubs were recognized for their work nationally, that the plan is being updated and sets a strategic roadmap. And last, that a new organization to really codify the STEM hubs into a association of leaders of those hubs has been formed with goals and outcomes that I'm sure they'll reach because of that new partnership. Here's a bit about the STEM education plan that is a part of the Investment Council work. The Investment Council for STEM is housed in the State Board of Education and Higher Education Coordinating Commission, direct and control that work. The council also receives staff support from HECC and from the Office of Workforce Investments, and has a legislative mandate to assist the State Board of Ed and HECC in developing and overseeing long-term strategy to meet established STEM education goals by 2025. So the vision of their new STEM education plan is outlined here around reimagining and transforming how we educate learners in order to enhance their lives, which includes and is related to the vision of the WTDB around improving the prosperity of all individuals and communities across the state, becoming creative lifelong learners, fully contributing to increasingly complex and technologically rich global society, and last, addressing high demand competitive workforce and industry needs. I just wanted to highlight the 4 goals that are a part of the STEM education plan. One, to inspire and empower our students to develop the knowledge, skills, and mindsets necessary to thrive in a rapidly changing and technologically rich society. Two, ensure equitable opportunities and access for every student to become a part of an inclusive innovation economy. Three, to continuously improve the effectiveness, support, and number of formal and informal P20 STEM educators. And three, I think that should say goal 4, but develop a sustainable funding and policy environment for STEM and CTE that provides reliable, seamless, and sufficient support across the biennium. I wanted to, as I called out earlier and mentioned the importance of the business community and employer community in driving the work of the Workforce and Talent Development Board as we move into the 4th Industrial Revolution, also point out how important employers are in the STEM education plan around offering opportunities for students, particularly from BIPOC and rural communities, to offer STEM-based work experiences, which we know the data shows that work-based learning experiences are critical for success with high school students and others, to expand and strengthen alumni and professional networks for students of color, students experiencing disabilities, and English learners and women, to create and strengthen collaborative partnerships, and last, to provide industry-based experiences for STEM educators and fundraising outreach to business and philanthropy. Again, touching on some of the same components that the WTDB is with public and private partnerships. I think it's also important to notice as well key areas of alignment between initiatives that include the Career and Technical Ed State Plan and the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act combined plan, our work on the WTDB, the Oregon Futures Commission, and its innovation plan, the Educator Council, Regional Educator Networks, and last, the Governor's Racial Justice Council.
Todd, thank you so much. I'm going to now have us pivot to Mark.
Thank you, Sally, and thank you, Todd, for the overview. Equitable prosperity is a key foundation for the strategic plan for the Governor's Workforce Board, because we knew that data from the last economic recovery showed that prosperity and the recovery were not equitable. And if we took a look at median household income gains during the last recovery, we saw very distinct and significant disparities between the average gain in MHI and let's say African-American families, where that line did not move very much. And so if we don't want to repeat that condition and we want to truly have equitable prosperity, there are some key changes we need to make at a policy level. And so that's what really drives the state workforce plan, strategic plan. It also, of course, drives the Equitable Prosperity Task Force, which you'll hear about in a moment. One key element of an equitable prosperity is to consider the impact of automation. And so, Todd, I don't know if you still have the magic wand, but if you could go ahead and spin up the AI task force slides, that would be great. And as you're doing, and as, thank you, Todd. Here, so I want to give kudos to my co-chair of this task force, KS Venkatraman, Venkat, as he likes to be called, Chief AI Engineer at NVIDIA. And I'm going to do my best to channel Venkat. I'm not a computer scientist. I don't even play one on TV. And so, but I'm going to try to channel the key points from Venkat's perspective. So why don't we go ahead? Thank you. So artificial intelligence, and a very, very basic overview. our AI task force and some of the key points from the report itself. Next slide, please. Thank you. So Venkat likes to sort of break the evolution of artificial intelligence into these three key areas. One is the broader rubric or broader banner of artificial intelligence. And these are algorithms that can sense, reason, act, and adapt with human-like intelligence. Going further in that evolutionary scale is machine learning. And these are algorithms where machines learn from vast amounts of data. The machines actually pull in data and make sense of it. In deep learning, these are algorithms that, in a very complex way, mimic the multi-layered neural networks in our brain. Much more sophisticated and advanced capacities. Next slide, please. You're probably familiar with Moore's Law, sort of based on the silicon chip evolution that indicated that over a certain time period, computing power would double. Now with GPUs or game processing units, Moore's Law is no longer relevant. I mean, it's no longer current. And so the computing capacity of the GPU is accelerating at a tremendous pace. And so when you add the two together, the deep machine learning capacity, mimicking neural networks, the computing capacity, and the growth of the internet, that is the sample sample base of data that algorithms can pull from, then you have the recipe for a tremendous acceleration of automation and artificial intelligence. Next slide, please. So, as you know, that has led to AI being everywhere. And anybody that's used Siri or Alexa knows, anybody that has a search engine that sort of automatically pops up ads predicting what you're likely to buy, those, of course, are commonly available AI applications. And there are many more in a variety of different fields. And these are just some of the examples in healthcare, for example, in finance, and of course in manufacturing, seeing it in education. I get bombarded with ads for chatbots for student affairs, usually admissions and outreach, cybersecurity. So it really is omnipresent now. Next slide, please. A report here about the national security implications also of artificial intelligence for obvious reasons, of course, including cybersecurity. Next slide, please. And when we take a look at the breadth or waterfront of applications for AI, we do see a very, very wide set of applications around public health. And Venkat often notes that AI was involved in some of the modeling around the coronavirus, economic growth, and identifying trends. So the applications of AI, of course, are stretching and growing exponentially. Next slide, please. So in terms of Oregon's involvement, the task force did put together recommendations on how we can do two main things. One is to keep Oregon on the forefront in terms of artificial intelligence, but two, how do we address the potential of AI in a way that also fosters equitable prosperity? And so in taking a look at the implications for education, looking at cross-disciplinary education and training programs, looking at investments in sector-specific areas, and then thinking about how AI can be applied broadly to challenges that our state is facing, like climate change. Next slide, please. This is just a very broad, this shows you the representation on the task force. Higher education, industry, had in the workforce system, had quite a bit of representation. And our largest subcommittee was the education subcommittee. And the subcommittee has a significant portion of the report with recommendations for Oregon's educational system. So next slide, and these are some of the recommendations. So the World Economic Forum, in their most recent study and international survey, indicated that about 40% of employers globally are looking at reducing their workforce due to automation, much of it powered by advancements in AI. At the same time, 30% of employers also indicated they are planning on increasing their workforce due to automation and the integration of new technology. And so what they're projecting is a tremendous disruption worldwide of the workforce, where older jobs, jobs that are relatively routine, that can be automated, 40%, many of them are going to be automated, and then they're going to be replaced by jobs that require the ability to integrate technology into the workplace. The old saying that you may not lose your job to a robot, you might lose your job to somebody who can work with one, is borne out by this data. And in terms of numbers globally, again, the World Economic Forum estimated maybe 85 million positions would be eliminated, but 97 million new ones would be created. And again, with new skills. And so the old workforce cycle that we saw in recessions and recoveries, where there was structural job loss, will apply here, only it'll be on steroids, right? Where we're going to see structural job loss of jobs that are relatively easily automated and replaced by new jobs that require higher skill levels and new skills. When we take a look at equity, here in the United States, the implications are stark, and largely because the positions and sectors that are at the highest risk of automation are disproportionately held by BIPOC communities, workers from BIPOC communities. And so as automation accelerates, we are likely to see a disproportionate impact. And of course, during the pandemic, we've already had a disproportionate impact on communities of color. And as we take a look at the trends that might indicate this movement, we saw in the fourth quarter of 2020 a 60% increase in robot sales. And this is in non-automotive manufacturing. So areas that normally don't invest a lot in robots are. It's highly unlikely, I think, that these employers are going to send the robots back to the factory after the pandemic is over. We also just saw a tremendous amount of experimentation with that automation. And you've probably seen the news stories of the robot baristas and so forth. And those are kind of eye-catching examples, but it's also happening in logistics and supply chain, again, in non-automotive manufacturing, areas that we're beginning to automate and are just accelerating. So as employers seek to not only increase productivity during a recession, they're also trying to pandemic-proof their operations. And that could not only accelerate the adoption of AI, but also exacerbate pre-existing disparities from a racial, socio, and economic perspective. So how do we try to get ahead of this? How do we anticipate that displacement and then enact strategies and policies that help us to not only retrain, but maybe pre-train individuals so that they are able to work in this more automated environment. One is, we need to look at our own education programs, and we need to take a look at what is needed. So in terms of curriculum, what comes to mind for me, and I'm oversimplifying it, of course, is sort of like a Roman numeral 3-shaped curriculum. And you think about the base of that Roman numeral being adult literacy, right? It's numeracy, literacy, and digital literacy. We have 43 million adults in this country at the lowest level of English literacy. And we have enough public, state, federal funding to serve maybe 1 million out of the 43 million. This population is already at extreme risk of being permanently locked out of our economy. As automation accelerates, they're going to be at even greater risk. So we need ladders of opportunity through education and training for this population. That's the bottom of the curriculum. And then the 3 slats that go up the middle of the Roman numeral. One, of course, is a deeper dive into the career pathway of AI. So a pathway that could go from a developmental ed to an associate's degree, to a bachelor's, to a doctorate or master's in artificial intelligence and computer science. But AI, as you saw from an earlier slide, is everywhere, right? And so people in health, folks in healthcare are going to need to know how to incorporate AI, how to work with algorithms. Folks in finance, the same. Insurance, advanced manufacturing. So those are the other parts of that Roman numeral where it can be threaded across the curriculum in terms of applications and implications of AI. And then across the top are skills that Venkat likes to call the human skills that make us better humans. Those are the skills that are really hard to automate, that AI is not very good at replicating and will always be needed. Empathy, critical problem solving, the ability to work in diverse work teams. So that's just a really sort of rough idea. At PCC, we're developing an associate's degree curriculum and a certificate, and we're talking with industry about that. So there is some movement, but we also need to be, again, thinking about how do we engage the large number of adults in Oregon and across the country who are going to need upskilling and additional education. So there were some ideas around funding, outcomes-based funding. We didn't make it into this session. We'd like to set the stage for the next one. And different incentives that we could use to fund in a center of excellency and encourage private investment. So I may have gone over my time.
Well, Mark, yeah, if you have something that you want to say, just as I know that there'll be lots of questions, but if there's anything you want to say, that otherwise Sherry is up next.
Okay, no, that's it.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, hello all. Let me find my presentation here. I'm going to start my timer, so you might hear a little musical chime at a certain point because it's hard to see. You can't really see time when you're in the deal. So I'm going to talk about the Equitable Prosperity Task Force and then some of the results that came out of that. In fact, one specific result that I'm working on right now. So the Equitable Prosperity Task Force, and these first slides are slides that the Workforce Talent Development Board and Coraggio Group worked to design together. So I just want to make that clear. But they helped us try to look at the current situation, right? The state's talent needs have only grown in recent years, even with COVID. As we look post-COVID or we're not really ever probably going to be post-COVID, but as we look to the next iteration, we see a new growth for needing of employees. Oregon's key workforce development actors in the system are employers, community colleges, workforce agencies, and they have to have better frameworks and relationships to deliver the skills that we need for this coming century. The urgency of this matter has only escalated due to COVID-19, which has impacted adult workers, particularly women and communities of color and low-income citizens, as well as rural Oregonians. So the purpose of the Equitable Prosperity Task Force is described as a redesign the system that would invigorate and empower employers, community colleges, and workforce agencies, and create the platform for productive, collective, and collaborative work to help thousands of Oregonians share in equitable prosperity post-pandemic. In other words, we have this reset moment, and we want to make sure that the reset is equitable, that it doesn't continue to enforce longstanding inequities in the state. So that's kind of the impetus behind this. And the summary of what we would like to see, it's like a summary of the future state characteristics. This is what we believe the future should look like here. And seamless integration of workforce system entities and wraparound services like childcare, social services, housing, education. I mean, this is all a part of how we move workforce forward. And again, if COVID has taught us anything, it's that the personal is business and business is the personal. You can't really separate the two, especially with people working literally out of their homes. Enhance investment and participation from industry. The system, our future state is going to reflect the population and communities it serves. It'll be a system that acknowledges historical harm and focuses on pathways that both encourage and seek out communities of color. Meaning, we know that historically certain communities have been systematically and intentionally excluded from prosperity. So therefore, it will take intentionality to change that. And that means intentional acknowledgement and specific pathways for those communities. Also, a workforce system that's transparent, accessible, and user-centered. The idea is there's no wrong door that you can enter in the workforce, that folks who are engaging with the workforce don't get this feeling of being getting a runaround, right? And the other future state is a commitment to leveraging data to make decisions, including disaggregated demographic data to baseline and set goals for improvement. So those are some of the things that it was a lot of work went into this, board members and others coming up with what we think a future state characteristic would look like. So also out of this came 5 imperatives, and the imperatives are to foster deeper sustained engagement by employers in identifying and communicating the skills they need, to explicitly identify outcomes and solutions to address the persistent lack of employment opportunities for disenfranchised communities, to center the system on the user, as opposed to the user having to figure out which way to go, improve alignment with agencies and nonprofits that provide wraparound supports, and extend the apprenticeship model beyond manufacturing, the construction and trades. For instance, the apprenticeship model has been used and is being used more and more around technology, around AI, in this way. So there are other ways to think about the apprenticeship model moving forward. So out of those 5 imperatives, we had specific work areas, and I'm only going to talk about 2 because they relate to something I'm going to show in a minute. But one imperative is explicitly identify outcomes and solutions to address the persistent lack of employment opportunities for disenfranchised communities. So what that looks like is identifying, engaging, and supporting stakeholders from affinity-based community groups that provide wraparound services. So what does that mean? That means if you have organizations that work with women, we want to identify and engage with them so that they are plugged in to the workforce system. People are more comfortable coming through trusted services, trusted sources into the system. If you have Hispanic, Asian, African-American based community groups, you want to work with them to connect to the system so that communities of color know that they have access, so that rural communities know that they have access, so that there is a connection point. Because some people are not always able to make the jump from where they are all the way over into the system. They need that middle ground, and that needs to be supported. Support for an adoption of legislative concept to make it easier for students to get credit for prior learning to better position them for job placement success. So we don't want people to have lost credits that they then feel like, oh, I can't, nothing, this is useless. We want it to feel useful, and we want to find a way to give people credit for that. And again, I'm focusing on these two because it's improving alignment with agencies and nonprofits that provide those wraparound support. So develop a support/wraparound service asset map was one of the things we came up with by region. Focus on, but not limited to, childcare, internet, transportation, and housing, and a comprehensive status update and assessment of SLDS and PRISM and how it can inform and assist data alignment related to and support wraparound services. So I'm focusing on these wraparound services, and I'm focusing on how they relate to the future state of our workforce, because one of the things that came out of our work was a childcare task force that the state board funded through work systems or work source that I am actually a facilitator on. And so out of that work we just talked about, then was pushed down to actually make actionable and real one of these components. And one of the components that rose to the top that we knew needed to be addressed was childcare as it relates to workforce. And that was very prescient, because here we are now with a lot of questions about how people go back into physical office spaces, et cetera. This is directly tied to how workforce is going to work. So this, what you're looking at right now, is some of my work from ITBOM Consulting and the work we are setting about doing on childcare, the childcare task force. So one, we're evaluating the current system. It has users, providers, payers, the methods, and those excluded. Number two, we looked at what is missing: coordination, support, access, cultural competency, and financial support. Number three, elements of the work we are doing on the child care task force. So a landscape survey, a pilot design, and a white paper. And number four, we outline the focus of that white paper. So this work here directly came out of the Equitable Prosperity Task Force, and one of the areas that we identified was needed. So for the childcare system, one of the things that I did was we have identified what's going on with the current system, who uses it, or who provides the services. So family providers, private providers, small providers, government providers, community-based, unions, workplaces, who pays. So we're thinking about all the payers, the parents, the state, the county, federal government, and people providing free services. How are they paid? Who are the users, and who's excluded? And this is basically going to kind of build toward some recommendations for the state as to what would be the way the state can most efficiently help folks around workforce and childcare. So we identified what is missing: coordination and support. Although there are a lot of people around the state working on pieces of this. Insurance barriers, 24/7 childcare, help with accounting, all those things that agencies need, cultural competency, access, and of course, cost is a barrier. And the elements of our work, again, our landscape survey, we are looking at what's going on in Oregon, Multnomah, Washington counties, nationally, and at the federal level, as well as some state examples. We're going to design a pilot that we think might work, and then we're also going to produce a white paper that integrates the workforce aspect with all the things we learned. So that is kind of just a really, really quick example, a tour through, what we were trying to identify with these 5 imperatives, and how one of those imperatives actually has moved down and gone into real life to try to produce something very solid that can be utilized to help workforce. And of course, as we all know, or as hopefully everybody knows, there's a tremendous, there's my little thingy. There's a tremendous amount of money that is moving into states around childcare, and potentially more. I actually think we have a once in a lifetime opportunity to tie childcare to workforce in the most explicit way, and to move our thinking that this is a part of the future state of work. And so there are a lot of things we cover equitable prosperity, but I just honed in on this one particular issue.
Thank you very much, Sherry. It's wonderful. Okay, now we will have Christian make his presentation. He's our final speaker today.
Hello. And I think maybe Pei has my, oh, excellent. Very good. So I'm going to go very quickly through a very large topic. So that might be the theme for today. I am an economist with the state of Oregon. Here's my name and email address. Here's your nice government title slide that I put up on all my slides, working for the employment department. We are currently revising our 10-year forecast. So we were on a 2-year cycle. I think we're moving to a 1-year cycle. There's an official employment forecast for the state of Oregon. It's various regions, by industry, by occupation. And we update that almost continuously now. That's currently work in progress, especially with the COVID crisis. So I have seen a draft. It is very internal at this point, not for public dissemination. We have meetings next month with a number of economists, including myself. We'll be advising on what comes out of that process. And hopefully by the fall, we will have a new official forecast. So what I want to do is I want to talk about what I think about and when I think about the future of work in Oregon. And when we project and sort of say, okay, what's the economy going to look like in say 2030? Nice round number in Oregon and Portland specifically, and what I talk with other economists about and what we sort of chatter about when we try to sort of come up with a number for how many jobs and where those jobs will be and where those jobs will not be in the year 2030. So I have 9 slides here real quick, but they're all pictures. So, you can just look at them, which is fun. Pictures are fun. So next slide, please. This is my first slide. Yes. So I want to talk about 2 things. First, I want to talk about the relationship between income in the Portland region and education. And then the next few slides will be about demographics and demographic challenges, both in Portland and around the state. So first off, something we need to sort of recognize when we think about Portland and its economy is that Portland has massively transformed in the last 10 or 20 years. Anyone who's been here for any length of time, we know that, right? And so, sort of walking around and having first visited here as a teenager myself in the 90s from Eugene, where I was born and raised, I walked around the Pearl District in the 90s as a teenager. And let me tell you, it was a very, very different neighborhood than it is today. So Portland has enjoyed incredible income growth. If you take the 50 largest cities in America, and I did, and you rank them in terms of the median household income growth from 2011 to 2019, and you adjust that number for inflation, and I did, you get a chart that looks exactly like this. Portland enjoyed a 43% increase. That is adjusted for inflation from 2011, which was the depth of the recession. So we came out of that much, much stronger than most places in America. Now, I'm just talking about the city of Portland. I'll talk about the Portland region in the next slide. So it's just the city of Portland. Average household income growth up $23,000. That moved us from being the 18th wealthiest among the 50 largest cities in America to the 9th wealthiest city in America. And this is the percentage growth there. You'll notice some superstars above us here: San Francisco, Seattle, Oakland, and us just ahead of Boston, Denver, Atlanta, San Jose, Austin. Next slide, please. So what happened? Well, lots of things happened, but one of the things that really stands out is lots and lots of jobs in STEM. So we're talking about STEM, here's STEM. So all occupation growth in the Portland metropolitan region. So I'm talking about the region, sort of the 7 counties: Multnomah, Washington, Clackamas, our friends in Southwest Washington, and Clark County and Skamania County, Columbia County and Yamhill County, 2.5 million people, the 24th largest metropolitan region in America. And we see that job growth from 2010, again, roughly the worst part of the recession, to 2018, we saw 25% job growth. Well, that's nice. It's a very good number. And we really did outperform most of the rest of the United States with that. But when you say, okay, well, where did we grow the most? Computer and mathematical related occupations, this would include computer programmers, but a lot of other IT sort of things, 67% growth in just 8 years. We really stand out there. Similarly, architecture and engineering, these are all architecture and engineering jobs, 41% growth, and science related jobs, life and physical science, 55% growth. One thing that you sort of quickly look at looking at this is that we are outperforming in jobs that require college degrees, right? Most people, computer programmers, architects, engineers, scientists, most of them have at least a bachelor's degree, and quite frequently they have a graduate degree. So education is a big part of this story. Next slide, please. So if I had a time machine, and I keep hoping for one, but it's not really working out for me. And well, you have a time machine. If back in 2005, I had this job in 2005, and somebody said, "Hey, Christian, what do you think are going to be, we'll take the 50 largest cities in America in 2005 and say, okay, which cities do you think will see the greatest increase in average median household income by the year 2018? One thing we could have done in 2005 is we could have taken the 50 largest cities, I did here, and you would take maybe the 10 least educated cities where the percentage of adults with a college degree, four-year college degree, is the lowest. And you see that on the left. Detroit, Memphis, Las Vegas, Cleveland, Milwaukee, Phoenix, Philadelphia, El Paso, Miami. And then you might say, okay, well, let's look at the 10 best educated cities in America. And in fact, Portland just made the list. We tied for 10th place with Minneapolis in 2005. When in 2005, and when I was here, there was a lot of chatter about Portland being, you know, sort of a middle income city, but highly educated. So the joke was sort of that we had a lot of baristas with college degrees or something. And so if you take the 10 largest cities in America, the 10 best educated cities in America, and you look at the inflation adjusted growth in median household incomes, wow, quite a story. And you see obviously some outliers here. I need to move my little screeny thing so I can see what I'm talking about. Seattle, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., very highly educated cities in America. I'm back to cities, not the regions, but the Portland region follows this pattern pretty nicely. 40, 50% growth in average household income. Seattle, 47%. Again, this is adjusted for inflation. And so, you know, overall 29% on average among the 10 best educated cities in America. On the other end of the spectrum, only 1% growth adjusted for inflation among the 10 least educated cities. So one more slide. This one's a little difficult, so I hope you'll give me a moment with it in the interest of time. This one's a little technical, but I think it's worth looking at. Next slide, please. So if I take metro regions, so I've been talking about cities and metro regions, I'm back to regions again. So you know, I'm not just talking about cities, I'm talking about metropolitan regions, and I have a lot of them in this chart, so I apologize for that, but I appreciate that we're talking about STEM, right? So we're talking about STEM and we're talking about artificial intelligence. So a common model for artificial intelligence, a neural network, is actually a nested binary regression. So this is, in fact, a regression, a continuous regression. There's nothing particularly binary about it. In artificial intelligence, you want the computer driving the car to figure out, should I stop at this intersection or should I go? So it needs to know what color the light is. So it has to sort of make an intelligent, artificially intelligent guess. Is that color red? Is that color green? And it's either 1 or 0, right? It's not a continuous thing. This is a continuous thing. And so what I've done is I went back again to 2005. I took all of the 50 largest metropolitan regions in America, and they're the gray dots. I know it's a mess. And so I took the gray dots. I took the percentage on the x-axis of adults with a bachelor's degree or more. And then on the y-axis, adjusted for inflation in 2018, the median household income in those regions. And then I drew a line through them in orange. Or really a regression analysis. So this is a pretty simple, I think it's a second degree polynomial regression. It's pretty standard, and you see this nice slope. Then I ran it again for the 2018 data, and that's in blue. So I did the same thing. You see those black dots, and you see those 3 superstars out in the upper right. Very high education, very high income. That is San Jose, that is Seattle, that is Washington, D.C. So the 3 highest educated regions in America are the 3 best educated, 3 highest income, right? Very nice correlation there. Speaking of correlation, there is something called R squared. So this is STEM, right? We're talking about STEM. And I'm sure many of you have taken statistics 101 in college, right? And maybe you remember, maybe you don't, that there's something called R squared. This is a correlation coefficient. Essentially, it's saying how close are these dots to that line? How much is X correlated with Y, or in this case, education correlated with income? And notice the slopes are actually a fairly similar relationship. Well, there's some interesting points there. But what you'll notice right away is that in the 2005 pattern, that orange line, that is an R squared of 0.7. That's quite high. So if all the dots fit perfectly on the line, the highest score you could get would be 100%. This is 0.7, 70%. That's a high correlation. You don't see that very often. And you would just say, hey, if I know what percentage of folks in a community have a college degree or more, I can guess pretty good, 70%, what the income level is going to be. We go over to the formula, and there's the polynomial regression formula as well for 2018, and you'll notice something right away. That R squared has now jumped to 0.82. What is happening is that the power of the education of a community to explain the level of income in that community, that relationship is getting stronger over time. In fact, only just a few years, 2005 to 2018. I suspect if I went back further, you would find very weak relationship, actually. So So this is getting started, but something else you'll notice with this blue line, it's fairly flat for lower education places. So going from 20, 25, 30% doesn't really change income very much. It's these superstars who are sort of pulling it up at the high end. And that's sort of where you see this income growth, these superstar, highly educated regions. Next slide. Get away from the statistics for a moment. And to maps. So mostly maps now for the rest of this till I stop talking and we can go to questions. So this map I stole, and it was very easy to steal. Well, I feel a little better about stealing it because the guy who made it put his Twitter account right on there. So I think it's at CINYC@9. So there you go. I did not make this map. This data came out on Tuesday afternoon. So I'm not that fast, and I'm not that fast making maps either. So he made this map, so it was great. And one of the things he did is he took all the counties in America. I think there's like 3,000 of them or something. Well, you can see there's many of them. And he said, okay, what happened to population change? Because the census data came out on Tuesday, and this is Thursday, right? So, and he mapped it all out. And he said, okay, well, I'm gonna color the counties that grew in population red, and the counties that shrank in population in blue. And this is very, very handy for us because we can just sort of glance at it and we see the crisis right away. And there were headlines this week, and there will continue to be headlines as we get further 2020 census data sort of rolls out through the summer and fall. Record low population growth, record low immigration, and record low fertility, record low number of babies being born, which is a continuation of a trend we've seen for decades. Very, very slow population growth. And that trend seems to almost be accelerating towards zero, really, in terms of babies being born, and so and population growth and immigration. So what you'll notice right away is there's some clustering here. So rural communities in the deep south, you see Appalachia there, West Virginia, East Kentucky. Illinois is a very interesting example. You see all of the growth in red counties in the Chicago area. Outside the Chicago area, pretty much every rural county shrinking. That is a story that appears to be true in about 30 states, where the vast majority of the rural counties in that state, you see New York is another good example, are shrinking. They're getting smaller. They're losing population over the last 10 years. And if there is population growth, it tends to be concentrated in urban areas. So you see that, for instance, in Georgia and the Atlanta region. So you sort of see that story over and over again. Texas, the fastest growing state in the country, added 4 million people to its population last decade. All of that was really, as you can see in red here, Austin, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth area, a little bit in West Texas, but many, many rural counties shrinking quite rapidly. So it's not across Texas. Texas is doing fantastic, but parts of it are actually shrinking. So you go to the west side and you see that there's 4 counties, and I'll name them quickly for people who aren't big geography buffs. Only 4 counties shrinking in Oregon. That's somewhat true in the west. Rural west sort of holding up a little bit better in the west, in the mountain west. And you see 4 counties. That's Wheeler, Grant, Harney, and Malheur shrinking over the last 10 years. Fastest growth there in Deschutes County in the center. Let's zoom in on Oregon, shall we? Next slide, please. So we don't yet have the age demographic breakout for this data. Census is a little overdue this year due to the COVID crisis. And so one of the things that I'm still have, the latest is 2019 age estimated population data. And I flipped the colors. So those were colors this other nice person did, and I appreciate being able to steal his work. I made this map, and I thought, when I made the map, I thought, I think growth is blue, and I think decline is red. So that's how I colored these things. And again, we see Grant and Wheeler, Wheeler and Grant County, the total population of those 2 counties is a little less than 10,000 people. 10,000 people. Wheeler County is noticeably under 2,000 people. So you'll see, if we just look at the population that is roughly working age, 25 to 64, almost all of Eastern Oregon has been declining in the number of people who are working age. That's a huge problem for Eastern Oregon. You see us now, Eastern Oregon is pretty small already. Many of these counties are quite small. That 0% Umatilla County, that's one of the best performing counties in Eastern Oregon in terms of population demographics. That's the Pendleton-Hermiston area. So this is clustered incredibly. In Southern Oregon there, you see some pretty negative numbers as well. The only county in Southern Oregon there, the Medford-Ashland area, growing by 4% over 9 years in the people that are working age. And you can get over 90% of the growth in the state of Oregon from 2010 to 2019 in really 3 regions: Deschutes County, the Bend area, the Salem area, Marion and Polk, and the Tri-County area in Portland. Multnomah, 11% growth, Washington County, 12% growth, and Clackamas County, 6% growth. That gets you to more than 90% of all the working age growth in the state of Oregon. And I get asked a lot about this, and I'll be very, very clear. I get, urban, rural, okay, urban, rural, okay, that's a thing. there's Lane County. That is the 4th largest county in the state of Oregon. It has the University of Oregon, it's on I-5, it has an airport, it has Eugene, it has Springfield. It's not that rural. 2% population growth in the working age population over 9 years. Very, very slow growth in the number of people, the number of bodies you could even have for working. So this is the demographic challenge, this age cliff we're coming up on, and I think it shows up nicely in the next slide. So again, just in the interest of time, I cut some of these down. So very quickly, and I know that some of these are a little noisy, this one's a little noisy too. This is the age demographics from 2019, still waiting on those 2020 numbers from the US Census. So the 2019 estimate in red, the 2010 in this sort of gray thing, so you can kind of see where we were 10 years ago, because it's kind of interesting. You see that baby boom wave right there. So you see in blue, lots and lots of folks in their late 40s, early 50s. Now, lots and lots of folks in their late 50s, early 60s. These are the baby boomers. And as you can see, they are rapidly coming up on retirement age. In 2019, anyway, folks age 60 to 64, 21 million people, very large age demographic. The second largest age wave, though, because you see the millennials there, 23 million of them at that point in 2019, 25 to 29, folks born around 1990, late 80s, very early 90s, the millennials, right? So the good news is these millennials who in 2010 were mostly teenagers have now entered the workforce in large numbers, as these baby boomers, and you can see in large numbers, have been exiting the workforce for retirement. The problem is we still have a lot of baby boomers continuing to exit towards retirement, and we'll see that for the next 10 years in very large numbers, but there is no age wave coming in behind the millennials. So that's the problem, and you can see that there. And in fact, the smallest age demographic under age 70 here, well, under age 65 anyway, is toddlers. Very, very low fertility, very, very low birth rates in this country, historically low, mean that 20 years from now, we're in deep trouble. Next slide, please. So this is Portland in 2019's age demographics, the region. I didn't label it very well. This is the Portland region, that 2.5 million person region, not just the city. And you see how we differ from the United States in gray in 2019. And you see here's Portland's superpower. Portland is incredibly attractive to people in their 30s and late 20s. And in fact, even into their 40s. So you can see much higher percentage of the population, late 20s, 30s, 40s. That's great. We really need that. So the problem is, look at the teenagers. Very small demographic in America, even smaller in the Portland area. Same with toddlers. We just don't have the bodies coming in the pipeline to grow the workforce. It's a big problem, but it's a bigger problem with my last slide, which is next. Thank you very much. This is Southern Oregon. This is Douglas, Coos County, Josephine, and Jackson counties. Same idea. This is the 2019 age wave in blue and gray for the United States for a benchmark. By far the largest demographic in Southern Oregon, and this is very common throughout rural Oregon, folks in their 60s. So this is a serious crisis. And again, you see very, very small population in their 20s, teens, even small populations of folks in their 40s. Disproportionately, their workforce is in their 50s and 60s, and will be retiring in very large numbers very quickly. And they've got a very big problem coming up. So these are the two things I'll wrap up now. These are the things we think about when we think, okay, what is Oregon's economy going to look like 10 years from now? These are the things we look at. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Christian. There are so many threads to this that I'm almost like I need to do a face plant or something and just kind of like think about it deeply. So I am going to, however, pass this off to our faculty panelists because I know that they have lots of questions. And if we don't have time to get to audience questions, we will follow up with you after the webinar. I've made a note of your questions in the Q&A box or in chat. So thank you. So I'm going to call first on Abby Chroman to pose her question to the group.
Thanks, Sally. I feel a bit the same way. I have a million questions in a million directions, but I want to thank each of the panelists for the work that you're doing. It's incredibly prescient and important for us, and I appreciate all of your time with us today, Mark, Todd, Shari, and Christian. My question is about how we know that we're achieving equitable prosperity, or how do we know that we are thriving?
Yeah, I mean, I think we I'll start with this. I mean, I think we can look at our data and our indicators of where we are. We can look at specifically the level of employment in our communities of color and our disenfranchised communities. We can baseline that. And then we can see as we go, is there more access? Are we getting better access? We can also look at wages. And this is where community partners really come in handy. Because, for example, I ran a nonprofit called Dress for Success Oregon. And one of the things we did is we baselined our clients' salary when they started, whether they employed or not employed. And then after they left our program, we did a survey to figure out what their salaries were later. We could tell you with high certainty for those we can reach what their level of income was and what percentage it increased by. So I think we baseline the data that we have, we work with our community partners and we get that data and we commit to tracking that data to see where the improvement lies. In addition to looking at access to community college, trade programs, and these other mentorship programs, having those programs be accountable to letting us know what the percentage of people who are enrolled in those programs are who represent communities in need. So that's one way I think we do it.
Thank you.
I agree with Sherry and would build on her comments by referencing Raj Chetty's work around opportunity and opportunity mapping. And one metric we've sort of kicked around is an upward mobility metric or an opportunity metric to identify is the next generation doing better? And that's pretty much Chetty's work in a nutshell. And so do low opportunity neighborhoods become higher opportunity neighborhoods as a result of some policy implementation? So that's another, I agree with Sherry about the importance of data as well.
Yeah, I might just jump in and say that I too agree with everything Sherry said and Mark said. We've had numerous conversations about better and more disaggregated data, access to that data sharing amongst traditionally siloed agencies and entities to really get a better picture of the folks that we serve. I think the other thing, Abby, that we're doing right now on the State Workforce Board is we're creating a committee called the Continuous Improvement Committee. And as a charge, that committee will initially, in the next not even 6 months, do a statewide assessment of the public workforce system, which includes the 14 programs of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, to see how it's functioning, where the gaps and issues are, where the opportunities are, and then that committee will be responsible for working with the contractor, produce a report that will go over to the governor's office, to the legislature, to the executive committee or the executive leadership at the state. And then we plan on also conducting that same assessment, evaluation, analysis report on a biennial basis to make sure that we capture the data and information so that we know that we're reaching our goals as an entity and as a system around equity and economic thriving by our citizens.
Thank you.
Carlos, I'm going to now pick on you. You sit at such an interesting intersection of this because of the work you do in public health, at the Equitable Project. I mean, STEM, I mean, I don't know where to begin. So I'm going to I'm so glad I'm not you right now.
No, thank you. And I want to thank the speakers because it shows that somebody has been working on this topic very seriously. And I was unaware. So one of the main issues here is affordability. We have communities of color, students who wants to dream, but they cannot dream when they look at the sticker price. And right now it's a you problem. It's not their problem. They have other problems. This issue is very serious. There's no us without them. And they don't know that. They don't know we're all in this together, not because we morally like it, but we know there is an economic issue here. We have immigration issues. We just stop how we can replace, the workforce. That's a valve that we had. We don't have it anymore, or we could have it if we want to. So my question is, it looks like a comment, but I do have a question. So are we institutionally, like the universities, the community college, prepare? And when I say prepare, I said, do we have financial aid to be able to allow these kids to dream that they can do it? And I'll just stop there, because there's other issues about mentoring. It's not just the universities and throwing money at it. Money is actually cheap. It's just, do we have the human power to mentor these students to take them to the next level?
That is a great question, Carlos. And the Real College survey that I think both PSU and PCC have participated in, administered by the Hope Center at Temple University, indicates that 2/3 of our students struggle with housing or food insecurity. And it's so hard to focus on school when you don't know where you're going to sleep and you're not sure what you're going to eat. And this is not a rite of passage this is not a top ramen issue, right? This is actually a life circumstance for so many of our students who have to quit one of their 2 or 3 jobs in order to go to school. And of course, now with the pandemic, it's much worse. One of the things we've started at PCC, we're leading a statewide effort called Pathways to Opportunity. And this is an effort, given the lack of funding, to integrate existing public benefits around students, including food stamps, a program called STEP, which is the SNAP Training and Employment Program, and HECC, or the Earned Income Tax Credit, Section 8 housing, TANF childcare, and others. And a lot of students don't know they're eligible for these. And so the first part is helping them become aware. And the second part is helping them to apply. My opinion is the welfare to work, so-called welfare to work reforms of the 90s was not about moving people out of poverty. It was about putting barriers to accessing these public benefits to reduce the usage of these benefits, right? And so all of these regulations, all of these stipulations, all of these requirements were added to benefit programs that have made them extremely difficult to navigate, particularly for college students. And so our work has been also in partnership with DHS. They've been a wonderful partner in eliminating things like the 20-hour per week work requirement to access food stamps while going to college. We added up the potential funding benefits and compared it to the average unmet need of a community college student in Oregon. And by integrating HECC, STEP, and SNAP, we found we could actually meet the average unmet financial need after tuition is paid for. Now, if a student is a caregiver, the costs are exponentially higher. And so, helping students access that is also critical. But that's sort of on the state front. On the national front, you're hearing the Biden administration proposing free community college and $62 billion in student success funds. And those proposals would go a long way toward the mentoring that you're talking about, toward the other student success initiatives, helping students to access all the other supports that they need. And of course, then that comes down to politics, right? And really what's going to happen in the Senate. And so, Ray, you're spot on. I mean, those are the primary barriers to equitable student success, right? Because it's disproportionately students of color who struggle with basic needs and security. And so this is an equity issue. It's a student success issue. And of course, with Christian slides around median household income and educational attainment, it's also a critical issue for the thriving ecosystem of our community.
And I think if I could just add to that, that highlights again the importance of wraparound services and making wraparound services a key component of work system feature as we think of this overall system, right? Workforce system, that wraparound services are centered, because if you have culturally competent support, if you have language-based support, if you have that, you have trusted navigators who can break down some of those barriers. If you don't have that, then the system becomes very difficult to access.
Can I put a plug in for HB 2835 very quickly? Speaking of politics. So that is a state bill that would pay for a benefits navigator on each college campus.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Carlos, for your question. Now, Alexa, you are our student. What is top of mind for you after listening to the speakers?
First of all, I want to thank all the speakers and everyone that helped facilitate this presentation. My question / comment, I guess, is a little bit more geared towards Mark's presentation. With so much emphasis on the need for technological education, my mind goes more towards the concern of losing out on those very important human skills that you mentioned, and how can we ensure that, you know, we don't miss out on that very important element. And will that, do you think that will become kind of a niche or in higher demand at the end of, go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Alexa. Great question. You know, I really, you know, these are the learning outcomes pursued oftentimes in the humanities, the liberal arts, and the arts, right? The skills, human skills that make us better humans are difficult for AI to replicate. And those are the skills that will really serve our students well. And to me, that speaks to the importance of the humanities, the importance of liberal arts, and interdisciplinarity. I remember when I was president of North Seattle College and visited the rapid prototyping and modeling lab at Boeing, and they had these amazing machine 3D printers, but you poured like aluminum powder in the top, and then the bottom you got a model of a jet or something. And so I said, what does it take to get a job here? And they said, oh yeah, material science. You need to know the materials you're working with. Certainly some algebra. Oh, and sculpting. And I said, well, tell me more about that. He said, if you're a sculptor, you can think in 3D, right? And then that translates really well to the CAD program that you use to design the piece that you're going to print. And so it was another lesson in the importance of interdisciplinarity, that our fields are becoming so intertwined, and barriers are being broken down and disrupted so quickly, in part powered by AI, but other things too, that you're beginning to see a need for a much more global and holistic perspective on just about every front.
Mark, I am going to interrupt you because we've got 4 minutes left, and there is a burning, there is a burning question that has come up through different channels. And that is, our first speaker from the state of California basically said that the growth of work is going to be in low skill work. Like most of the growth that we see through 2030 is going to be in waitressing and home care aides. And his argument, or the state of California's argument, is let's start paying those people a middle class wage, just like we did in the days of manufacturing. Those were not well-paid jobs, but we made them well-paid jobs. And then we launched this middle class. What are your thoughts, or all of you, Sherry, Todd, Christian?
Well,
is Oregon doing that?
Yeah, so there is a drive specifically around the issue of childcare. is to raise the wages of those who provide childcare services, which are predominantly women. And this has come up in Multnomah County around universal pre-K, but in childcare in general. And as you know, that is in fact a feature of some of the stimulus money that came with the recent Biden administration, which is also to look at capacity for childcare services and support, right? So if we can raise wages in that area, we may be able to use that as a way to look forward at other areas. And quite frankly, many corporations and businesses have moved to try to bring up the wages, right, of their lower skilled workers. But childcare is one area where there is an explicit and direct move to increase the wages of childcare workers to a more livable wage, and a wage that is commensurate to get people to stay in the industry. Because once again, we do need childcare. Even with reduced fertility, we still have kids. So, so anyway, that's one area where they are working on it explicitly.
Thank you. Well, I am really sad that we've run out of time, because for me, this is just getting really interesting and fun. And there are so many wonderful questions in the chat. And I just want to let everyone know that we will follow up with you, and we have a page, Future of Work webpage, and we will post the answers to these questions and the webinars from today and the slides from today. And I just want to invite everyone to come to our final webinar of the series next Thursday, where we are posing these questions to our PSU leadership. What is PSU doing about the future of work, especially in light of what we've just been discovering this past month? And we will be joined by Susan Jeffords, our provost, and Amy Lambert, our vice president for diversity, equity, inclusion, Greg Flores from the Career Center, Laura Nissen and Jeannie Enders from the business school, and many others. So I hope you will be able to come. And I want to thank our speakers today. Oh my gosh, this has just been amazing. Thank you for your time. And a round of applause to all of you. Thank you. So with that, I think we are actually finishing right on time. So thank you, everybody, and be well.